All right, looks like we have all the folks that we need. Um, Thank you all for joining today's training session. We're going to be reviewing custom content within the Intranet CMS. Today's training session will be recorded and posted on the EPA at Work website. And so for those of you who have joined us for previous sessions, those will also be available online. And for those of you who are not able to attend future sessions, those recordings will also be made available to you. With that said, I hope you guys can see my screen. If you cannot, please let me know. But I did want to quickly review the training schedule for upcoming courses before we actually start discussing custom content inside of the Intranet CMS. So today's training session is going to be a short one. It's going to be just 30 minutes. However, 2 weeks from now, we will be reviewing forms inside of the CMS. That'll be on October 25th, and that's about an hour long. And then we'll have our very last training session, which is a follow-up to the introduction of forms in the CMS, which is the advanced forms class, and that'll be held on November 8th of 2021. Again, for those of you who'd like to register for those specific classes, you can do so by accessing the CMS training web area, which I'll give a reference to here in just a moment. With that said, let's jump into today's topic, which is custom content inside of the CMS. Our agenda is as follows. We're going to first review exactly what is custom content and how can we add some of these custom blocks to our pages and landing pages. We'll also talk about some of the commonly used blocks, and then we'll have a quick demo in the staging environment, followed by questions at the very end of this call. All right, before we continue, I did paste a link in the chat room. For those of you who would like to follow along during today's training session, please make sure that you navigate to workstage.epa.gov and sign in. If you've already signed in for one of the previous training sessions, you should be fine. But for any of those of you who are new or just signing into the staging environment for the first time, we will need to get you associated with a web area so you can follow along. And so again, for those of you who'd like to follow along, now would be the time to sign in as we get ready to review the PowerPoint. All right, so let's move along and let's begin talking about custom content. So what are custom blocks? Custom blocks are small collections of content that you can place on a basic or landing page. Custom blocks may display differently depending on the type of page they are on. The required fields associated with the custom block will vary based on its type. And so, for example, if we're maybe dealing with a slideshow, we'll be presented with different fields as opposed to if we're maybe working with a dynamic list. Some of the commonly used blocks are the media blocks, which we can actually see in this screenshot here. We have 6 different media blocks laid out here. We also have the card block, which is not pictured, as well as the dynamic list and the slideshow blocks. Some additional blocks that are available that are not so common are the box block, as well as the rich text, list of link, and tagline blocks. Now you'll notice that for some of these blocks, like the media block, that is only available on a particular type of page. In this instance, the media block is only available on the landing page. And just so keep that in mind that some blocks, while they are interchangeable, not every particular kind of block is available for the types of pages that are present. All right, we're going to take a closer look at some of these commonly used blocks before we jump into our demo. And so let's quickly talk about cards. A card is a member of a collection of similar cards, and I'll be showing an example here in just a moment, but it is not recommended to be used if you only plan on displaying a single card. However, if you have 2 or more cards, it is an okay feature to use. Next, we have dynamic lists, which are used to display a list of articles, events, or blogs. And for those of you who attended the training session, I believe 2 weeks ago, which was events in the CMS, we actually walked through the process of creating a dynamic list of events in that particular call. Today we'll be focusing on a dynamic list of articles. A cool feature about the dynamic list is that it automatically updates based on a particular filter criteria, which we'll also be demoing. And then very lastly, we have the slideshow block, which essentially is just a series of images. And I believe you can have a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 20 images. And one thing to keep in mind when it comes to the slideshow is that the viewer must actually click or interact with the slideshow in order to change the image. We do not currently support an auto scroll feature. And so depending on how many images you have, just keep in mind that users will actually have to manually click left to navigate left or right. All right, now that we've briefly covered the custom blocks that are available and what we're going to be reviewing during the demo, for those of you who'd like to follow along again, this is the link that you will need to navigate to, workstage.epa.gov. And so at this time, I'm just going to take a quick break and turn it over to editors. If you guys have any questions, now would be the time to unmute yourself and ask your questions. And for those of you who are just maybe getting signed in for the first time, if you want to drop your username in the chat, I can go ahead and get you associated with the web area before we start our demo. All right, so I'm not getting any questions and I'm not seeing anybody reaching out in the chat. So I'm going to assume that everyone that would like to follow along is able to do so. And actually, before we get started, I see that Sarah has actually just requested to be added to a web area. So if you guys can bear with me, I'm going to quickly get her added to a web area so she can follow along. Give me just a moment. All right, Sarah, I've gone ahead and added you to the testing web area. And Robin, I've gone ahead and added you as well to the same testing area. And so once you log in, you should be able to follow along. So let me start sharing my screen and we'll continue. All right, I hope you guys can follow along. I'm going to go ahead and get signed in. All right, now that I've signed in, I am currently viewing my user profile. In order to do that, you can click on the View Profile link here at the top left-hand corner of the screen. Alternatively, you can click on the My Account link right next to the Logout link on the right-hand side of the screen. All right, for time's sake, I'm just going to navigate to a basic page that I've already created, which has some custom blocks on there for us to use. And so I'm just going to quickly discuss some of this content, and then we're actually going to walk through the process of recreating this here. So all custom content will always be displayed below the body of the page. And so in this particular instance, our first heading is shown here, and then we have the main content of the page immediately below. So after that, we have our first section of custom content. And so here we have 3 cards using the standard view mode. And as we can see, each one of the cards has a call out, which will actually redirect us to a different page. Again, we don't recommend using cards if you are only planning on using a single card. However, if you would like to use 2 or more cards, this is a good block to use. Immediately below that, we have an example of a dynamic list. And so we can see here, we have some articles. And in this instance, we are actually we're not filtering any of these articles, but once we go into edit mode, we actually will. And then at the very bottom here, we have an example of a slideshow. And again, I'm gonna actually have to click on the left and right arrows to scroll through those images. And so now that we've seen an example of some of these custom content blocks, let's actually walk through how we would add these to our basic page. In order to do that, I'm going to click on the edit button for my basic page. And I'm going to scroll below the body, and I'm presented with a custom content section here. I'm actually going to go ahead and quickly remove these 3 items. All right. Now, the first thing that we are going to do for today's training is we are going to add 3 cards. So in order to do that, right below the custom content header, we're going to click on this drop down, and we are going to select to add cards. Now, by default, a single card block can hold up to 3 different cards. And so let's actually walk through the process of filling out the first card. So we can first identify the card type, which is the display type. For now, we're going to keep it as standard, but you do have some additional options. We have the extent media option, the flag left, flag right, card header first, and card insert media. If you'd like to get some more information about these particular styles, you can actually navigate to the card training page that we have available to you. And that's actually in the CMS training web area. So if you want to make a note of this particular link here, this is going to have some of that information for you. And so the biggest difference between the styles are noted here. But one thing that I would like to note is because we normally use the card block with more than 1 card, and we can have up to 3, this is how they'll be displayed when we have 3 available here. However, if we have 2, we can use the flag options. And essentially what that will do is change the width of the cards themselves so that the 2 cards fit proportionally on the page. And so with that said, I'm going to jump back into my basic page, and we're going to add the media for our very first card. For now, I'm going to select this image of the berries here. Next, I can provide a heading for my card. And then below that, I can provide some sort of text for the body of the card itself. And then if I would like to, I could provide a call to action with a URL. And so for now, I'm going to go ahead and just type in a keyword here, and I'm actually going to select to link this particular card to the style guide, and then I'll provide some sort of link text for that. All right, so I've now filled out my very first card. At this time, I'm just going to quickly save my page so we can see how that is displayed. And as you'll notice here, I've got my very first card. However, it doesn't look very aesthetically pleasing. And so let's go ahead and actually add our second and third cards very quickly. So I'm just going to walk through the same process. I'm going to go back into edit mode, and I'm going to click on the edit button to the right of my custom card component. And you'll notice that immediately below the information that I entered for the first card, there is an add card button. Clicking on the add card button will present me with a new set of fields. And so I'm going to go ahead and maintain or keep the same card type or card style, which is the standard card. And I'm going to go ahead and add my second image. Followed by some of the heading information. And then I'll provide a different call to action URL. This time it'll be towards the grammar guide. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a third card. Again, I'll keep the same card type and select my third card image. All right. I've now created my 3 cards with the appropriate required fields. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And as we can now see, the page looks a lot better. And so we've now finished the process of adding our cards to our page. Now, some things to keep in mind is that a single card block can hold up to 3 cards, so that we currently have the maximum. However, we can use 2, but again, we do not recommend using cards if you only plan on having a single card. One other thing to note is that typically when we use cards, we want to make sure that we are using the same style for all 3 cards or all 2 cards, depending on how many we have available. And that's just to make sure that the page continues to be aesthetically pleasing. All right, now that we are finished adding our cards, we're going to now add our dynamic list. So I'm going to go back into the edit mode of my basic page. And I'm going to select on the custom content dropdown. This time I'm going to select to add a dynamic list. And the first thing I can provide is the dynamic list header. For now, since this is going to be a list of articles, I can select that or provide the header name. Next, I can choose the type of content that I actually want to be included within my dynamic list. And so for now, we're going to be focusing strictly on articles. So I'll select articles. And then next, I'm prompted to select my display or how I want the list of articles to be displayed. For now, I'm going to select the list display type, but we're going to take a look at the teaser view in just a moment as well. All right, so I've now provided the appropriate information necessary to create my dynamic list. However, if I'd like to filter that dynamic list, I can do so by clicking on the options link here, and that opens up a panel where I can provide a particular keyword. So by default, the dynamic list feature will display the latest 6 articles unless I've provided some sort of filter. And so for now, I'm going to keep this filter field blank. And so I'll be presented with all of the latest articles, and then I'll come back in and actually add a particular keyword. All right, so now that I've saved my dynamic list, I can now see it presented here immediately below the card content that we just added. Now, you'll notice here that the link to the lists is just that. There's no additional description and there are no images. And so let's actually take a look at how we can update that using a different view mode. I can click on the edit button once more. And from the edit page, I'm going to scroll down and click on the edit button to the right of the dynamic list. And this time, instead of using the list display, I'm actually going to use the teaser display, which will give us an image and some additional information about the actual article. I'm going to go ahead and save again. And if I scroll down, this time you'll see that, excuse me, this time you'll see that the article's a little bit more informative. Not only do I have a picture, I've got a nice description here, and then I can also see some of the keywords that are associated with these particular articles. And so very lastly, let's say that I'm not interested in articles from, from throughout the entire intranet. Let's take a look at how we can actually filter. So I'm going to click on the edit button now. I'm going to scroll down. And let's say that I only want to see articles that have a particular keyword. I'm going to go ahead and expand the options pane here. And I can actually provide that particular keyword. So for now, I'm going to select HQ Health News. And I'm going to click on the Save button. All right. And now if I scroll down to view my list, you'll notice that any articles that did not have the HQ Health News tag or keyword have now been removed, and I can now only see the latest 6 HQ Health News tagged articles. And so with that said, please keep in mind that there are additional view modes. However, in the interest of time, I will not be reviewing them. But we do also have a training page specifically for dynamic lists, which is also included in the CMS training web area. And so this particular page covers in a lot more detail all of the different view modes and then all of the different features and settings that are available for dynamic lists. And so with that said, we're going to touch on the very last piece of custom content for today's training session, which is the slideshow feature. And so I'm going to go back into edit mode again for my basic page. And this time I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to select the drop down here. I'm going to select to add a slideshow. All right, now that I've selected to add a slideshow, I can select my very first image. I'll click on the choose file button. Please keep in mind that we do only allow certain file types, and they cannot be greater than 20 megabytes in size. So I'll select my first image, and I can provide some alternative text. Now, please keep in mind that the caption here is optional. If you have some descriptive alternative text, it is not required. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and actually provide that. And once I'm done with my first slide, I can click on the Add Slide button to add an additional slide to my slideshow. I'll select my second image and provide some alternative text. And then I'll select my very last image. All right, now that I've finished creating my slideshow, I'm going to go ahead and save my page. And I do apologize for that. Looks like we ran into some sort of issue. Let me try this again. Let's try it again. All right, there we go. Scrolling down below my articles, I can now see my slideshows present. Again, the captions will be displayed below the image. However, these are not required. And so at this point, I believe we've covered how to add the 3 common types of custom content. We have our 3 cards here at the very top, followed by our dynamic list of articles in the middle, and then our slideshow at the very bottom. Now, everything that we've covered so far has been on a basic page. However, these blocks also apply to landing pages. And so in the interest of time, I've actually created a landing page already with very similar blocks to give you guys an idea of how the styling looks depending on the type of page the blocks are applied to. And so here we have a landing page with 3 cards at the very top again. You'll notice that here on the landing page, as opposed to the basic page, the cards themselves are a little bit wider. That's because there's more available width on the page. There's no menu here on landing pages. However, you'll notice that some basic pages do contain a menu. Immediately below our 3 cards, we have a dynamic list of articles, again, filtered based on a particular keyword. I think in this instance, we filtered on the HQ announcements tag or keyword. And then at the very bottom, we have a slideshow again, except this time it's on a landing page. And so as you can see, the features do work identical, but there may be some visual changes. Some pictures may be a little bit smaller or bigger depending on whether or not you're using a basic page or not. However, the required fields should be the same regardless of what kind of page you're adding it on. And so I did want to take a quick look at how we can add a new section on our landing page. And so in order to do that, I'm going to click on the Layout button. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to add 2 media blocks at the very top of the landing page above our cards. And so from Layout mode, we're going to click on the Add Section link. Because we want to add 2 different media blocks on the same row, we're going to select the 2-column layout. We'll make sure to keep this at 50-50 in terms of the column width, since we want that to be even. And we're not going to provide a label or a style for now. And we can now see that our section has been created with our 2 halves. Let's go ahead and actually add a media block on the left half. I'm going to click on the Add Block link. Then I'll click on the Create Custom Block link here at the top. And I want to use a media block. So I can provide the title of the media block. I can select an image. I'll provide some information for the heading and the text field. And then again, we have a link or call to action that we can use here. And then very lastly, we'll click on the Add Block button to add that particular media block. Now you'll notice here that an image style has been automatically applied to my image. In this case here, it's this circular crop. But essentially my media block is now completed. So I'm going to very quickly go ahead and add a second media block. And I believe that will wrap up today's demo. All right. And I can now see my two media blocks. And so with that completed, I'm going to go ahead and say the layout of the landing page. And we are now done. So at the very top, you'll notice we have our two media blocks, and you'll notice that the media block headings are actually now links to the URL that we provided when creating the block. And then we have some of the other blocks that we discussed earlier during the call. And so in this particular instance, please keep in mind that the media blocks are only available on landing pages. Those are not available on the basic page, which we worked on initially. And with that said, I believe that's all that I have for you guys today. And so at this time, editors, feel free to unmute yourselves. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding custom content or how to access any of the training resources, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask away.
Is there any way to take the images from the CMS media library instead of browsing the local computer?
So unfortunately, right now, you do have to upload or browse from your local computer when dealing with the slideshow feature. However, when you're using the media blocks, cards, in the when you're using the media block in the cards, you can upload from the media library directly. However, with the slideshow, you cannot. And so that is something that we can look into. And I'm actually going to make a note of that to see if there's maybe something that we can do to allow editors to select existing content for the slideshow as opposing to always having to upload it directly from their local computer. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I think I may have heard someone else chime in. Did anyone else have any questions? Okay. It sounds like there are no additional questions. I don't see any other questions in the chat room. And so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the call. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to the Intranet CMS team. And then additionally, if you guys would like to review some of the training that's available, those links are posted on the screen now. And so again, I want to thank you all for joining today's training session. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. If not, I hope to see you on the next call. Thank you all very much.